Hi everybody, Ryan Bush here. In this video, I wanted to talk about the process of decalcifying the pineal gland and how it relates to the overall process of consciousness, spirituality, and inner growth. The main focus here is going to be using a 5-minute process of using sound vibration to help these calcium deposits flake off that can build up over time due to things like fluoride and other chemicals in our modern world. But before we go through that process, it helps to understand more about what the pineal gland is and why it matters. So the pineal gland is a small gland about the size of a pea at the top of the brainstem. It's sometimes described by people as being in the center of the brow, but it's really deep inside the head at the very top of the brainstem. For a long time, scientists have understood that the pineal gland is important in producing melatonin, which helps to regulate our cycle of sleep and wakefulness. But it also, under certain circumstances, can produce another chemical, which is called DMT. And various studies have shown that DMT gets released spontaneously at a number of crucial points in our lifetimes. For example, when we're born, when we die, and in various intense visionary experiences. For example, awakening experiences, sometimes called Satori, Samadhi. There are many, many names in various traditions. But the crucial point here is that it isn't just completely random whether DMT gets produced. It is much easier for it to be produced if our pineal gland is functioning normally. And in our modern world, there are various chemicals that we get exposed to, for example, fluoride, that can lead to a gradual buildup of calcium deposits on the outside of the pineal gland. Some estimates say that 2/3 of adults by the time of age 18 would have these calcium deposits. And these deposits don't cause any issues for a lot of aspects of how the pineal gland functions because the melatonin is produced normally and all that. But it seems to be, from my own personal experience and many other people's as well, that once we help these calcium deposits flake off of the pineal gland, then the pineal gland can start to resonate in a number of crucial ways in response to sound vibration, as well as in these various kinds of visionary experiences. To understand more about why the pineal gland can resonate in ways that are important for consciousness and spirituality, it helps to keep in mind that the pineal gland isn't just an empty resonating chamber. It has trace amounts of minerals in it, like magnetite and calcite, and magnetite can respond to magnetic impulses, while calcite is repelled by magnetic impulses. So together they help the pineal gland serve as a kind of radio transmitter that can respond to tiny amounts of energy and frequencies, whether it's picking up energy from other people or things around us in the world, or from wherever soul, spirit, and inspiration come from. And once the pineal gland is picking up these frequencies from somewhere or another, it starts resonating in response to these signals. And that's where the other important piece of the biology of the pineal gland comes in, because the pineal gland is connected by the optic nerve to the visual processing centers in the brain. So whatever signals are picked up can get turned into visual images by this connection to the brain. And this is why the pineal gland can play such an important role in visionary experiences. With all that being said, we don't have to have any understanding whatsoever of the biology of the pineal gland for it to have a big impact in our lives. In other words, the proof really is in the pudding about, we can try decalcifying the pineal gland and see what happens. For myself, there was a very direct and clear link. The first night I did this process of decalcifying the pineal gland, I laid down to go to sleep, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, I heard this tink sound inside my head, which is obviously not a place where sounds usually come from, but that really seemed to be the calcium deposits flaking off. And within a day or two, I started having much stronger surges of insight and inspiration. And shortly after that, I had my main awakening experience in 2014. So I wanted to share the process of decalcifying the pineal gland in case it's helpful for anyone else as well. I first learned this process from a book that I had found, and I believe a number of other people out there have talked about a similar thing. So to begin, I always like to take off any metal jewelry whenever doing anything related to energy centers, just to help our energy travel as smoothly as possible. And the next thing we want to do is try to get a sense of what note we're going to be using, because we're going to be saying a voiced TH sound, kind of like if we're saying the word though with this TH in the beginning, but we're not going to be just saying it, we're going to be singing it at a particular note, like A flat or B flat in the middle of the keyboard or piano, around 915 to 936 hertz, which can be a little high for some guys to hit, but we can always do an octave below that if we want to. So I'll show it on the piano in a moment, but we're going to want to keep that note in mind. And then for how we're saying this voiced TH sound, if we just say the word though, kind of holding out that our tongue might stick just a tiny bit out through the teeth. For this process here, we want to have the tongue really firmly sticking out in between the upper and lower teeth. And we're going to be using this TH sound to kind of produce these sound vibrations. And we want that to travel via the teeth to the other parts of the brain so that it'll reach the pineal gland at the top of the brainstem. So I like to think of myself as being like a tuning fork, just vibrating completely openly, trying to have as little tension as possible. So I like to start by shaking off any tension I might have, and then let's get the note, which corresponds to a middle A flat or a middle B flat on a keyboard. For example, this. Oh, or that, B flat. Oh. But if those notes are too high to do, we can do a lower octave, like a lower A flat. Oh, oh. In terms of which note is right for any given person, the main factor that's involved is how large someone's pineal gland is. Just like all the other organs in our bodies, some people might have a slightly larger pineal gland, some people might have a slightly smaller one, and as with any kind of instrument, the larger it is, the lower a note it would resonate with. And what we're trying to do is something like how someone could theoretically break a glass if they hit the right note that resonates with the glass. And when we hit the right note or something like it, those calcium deposits will flake off. So a good rule of thumb is to just use the high A flat. In case people don't have a piano, you can always look up what 915 hertz sounds like, or 936. And many Tibetan bowls also correspond to a similar note. Of course, a bowl would have a number of different notes combined together in its overall set of frequencies. So, with that, let's get started. And we're going to be holding this note for 5 minutes, breathing whenever we need to. And we're going to be doing this 3 nights in a row, ideally sometime shortly before going to bed, because it can trigger a slight headache or moderate headache for some people. So we're going to keep the note in mind. And then we're going to set our intention. For example, our intention might be to decalcify the pineal gland and help usher in a more direct connection with soul and spirit. Now we begin. And now we can put our hands together again and give thanks for the chance to practice. We'll repeat that process for 2 more times on successive nights, ideally just before going to bed. There is a lot more to say about the process of working with the pineal gland once it's been decalcified, and some things to keep in mind about how to adjust to the way things may feel once a pineal gland is decalcified, but I'll talk about that in a separate video. As always, if anyone has any thoughts or questions, please let me know. Peace, love, and blessings.